Our next guest has a PhD in math and is the author of Weapons of Math Destruction: How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy. And in 2022, the book The Shame Machine: Who Profits in the Age of Humiliation. She's also the founder of Orca, O'Neill Risk Consulting and Algorithmic Auditing. You must have very busy days. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest, Cathy O'Neill. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, nice to meet you, Pete.
Nice to meet you as well. That's Greg Bach sitting across from us.
Hello. Hey, Greg.
Hi.
It's great to have you here. Let's start with, let's just jump in and ask you about Weapons of Math Destruction. Love the title.
Thank you.
It's one of those books I had to read a few of the passages about 3 times to fully grasp what you were saying, which means it's probably a really good book. So please tell us about this Weapons of Math Destruction.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a book that came out 10 years ago, almost, like September 2016, that I wrote basically as a call to arms for the public to start worrying about technology, and in particular, the role of algorithms making secret decisions about our lives. And I identified a bunch of, I was actually a blogger back in the day. Now I'm a podcaster, obviously, but back in the day, I had a blog called Math Babe, and I would just, talk about having worked in finance and all the regrets and embarrassments about that. And I joined Occupy Wall Street, and I was working as a data scientist to make a living, living in New York City with 3 kids. And my blog, my readers, the blogger readers were so wonderful. And I would start, I started this kind of running list of creepy algorithms, I call them. And they supplied me with more, and I was like, oh my God, there's just a ton of creepy algorithms. And they all are potentially extremely powerful to ruin people's lives. And I sort of developed a taxonomy of them and eventually came to the concept of a weapon of math destruction. So I wrote a book about them. And, as you saw in the book, it basically is at every moment that a person's life touches bureaucracy, whether that's getting into college or getting a job or getting a mortgage, or, almost at any moment when you hit a bureaucracy, you're being evaluated by an algorithm. And if it's a shitty algorithm, that's kind of bad luck for you.
Well, and I think that's a word. The word algorithm is something that's come so much into the zeitgeist over the past few years, and people try to quantify it in various ways. But as you said, just from the fact that it doesn't even have to be getting a mortgage or signing up, going to college. If I just open a rewards account at a grocery store, they've got my information. That goes in an algorithm. They send me, we are just thrown into it no matter what. You're in it regardless of whether you try or not, because it's everywhere, correct?
Yeah, you could think of it, and that's a great example. If you get a card at a grocery store and they collect the data on what you're buying, and then they send you coupons that are directed to trying to get you to buy slightly more expensive things. It's like a one-way mirror. I want you to think of it that way. It's a one-way mirror of them looking at us and trying to figure out how to extract more money from us. And the actual way they do it is through algorithms, because they're trying to predict things. They would call them predictions, but the truth is there's a lot of power in those predictions. They actually don't just predict the future, they cause the future. And when they're predicting you, they're not just predicting what you're going to do, but sort of pushing you and nudging you towards those things in a really very potent way.
In this book, Weapons of Math Destruction, you say it's dedicated to all the underdogs. Who are the underdogs, and are there underdogs in particular that this book is dedicated to?
Yeah, one of the things that I learned pretty quickly when I started studying this, actually, I was a data scientist when I wrote this book, right? So I was doing this actually in the context of travel. I was working at an ad tech company that is no longer in business because it was a terrible idea. But it was deciding who deserves what kind of ads in the world of travel, whether that's hotels or flights or whatever. And one of the things I realized almost immediately when I started doing this, because it wasn't that different from the kind of work I had done trying to predict the futures market when I was a hedge fund quant. So, it's just predicting people instead of markets. It's actually a lot easier to predict people. They're much more predictable. But the biggest, by far, the biggest statistical signal I was searching for was wealth. I was just looking for people with money. But that, and that's just a fact about online interactions. What most data is being collected about you to find out what you have money, whether you have money, and what you're going to spend it on. But secondarily and tertiarily, like what we're looking for is your wealth, your gender, and your race. And one of the things that, those are three really easy things to figure out about someone, it turns out. And people are profiled based on those, those are, that not that many options in those various three different dimensions. And you're basically we're all being boxed into these profiles, and we're being given what they think we deserve. And so when I say underdogs, I'm really talking about the people that are on the short ends of those sticks. Because let me just tell you a story, which I think is in the book. Like when I was working at that ad tech company, one of the investors came and like gathered us around him and said like what his future of the internet would be. And he was really like, if you think of a VC, he's like a venture capitalist. They're architects of the space that we live in online. They decide what happens and what doesn't happen. They fund it or don't fund it. And his vision was, I'm going to see ads for trips to Aruba and jet skis, and I'm never ever again going to have to see a University of Phoenix ad, because that's not for people like me. And or people around me laughed. It was like, oh, like why would a rich white man be like preyed upon by a for-profit college? A rich, educated white man.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fourth thing. How educated are you? Whereas and I was curious about that. I was like, well, I've never seen a University of Phoenix ad, but I looked it up, and at that, even in that quarter that he came to talk to us, that quarter, Google ads, that was a single biggest Google ad sell was to University of Phoenix. And in particular, nonprofit colleges were just having a heyday at the time of 2012, 2011. And they were specifically going after poor Black women whose family had never gone to college, because they could be counted on, number one, to not know the difference between a private college and a for-profit college, because they didn't have friends and family who went to college. And number two, to be so poor that they were eligible for this financial aid, which would go directly from the government to the colleges, and then they wouldn't get educated, and they basically get screwed. And so that was really kind of the way I was thinking about the book. I was like, this is how we're setting it up. We're setting it up, and I was part of it. We're setting it up to like give lucky people, get lucky people luckier, and get unlucky people unluckier.
Wow.
And something you said that hit me, I wanted to ask about really quick, because, we see these ads come through our social media, and you said they said, we want to give them what we think they want. How strong are people at resisting, or do they eventually, if they see, if the algorithm is used correctly for the folks who are advertising, is there a way for that? Do they just say, just wait it out? You send them enough ads, they will at the very least check it out. So say even just going to University of Phoenix to check out courses, the clicks, the engagement is also what they're looking for. How strong are these formulas that really just keep getting at people until they finally just bend and break and go and do the thing they want them to do? Yeah,
those for-profit colleges, and I'll add another category of predatory ads, which is like payday lending.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be clear, they only get shown when somebody says like, I want to go to college, or like, I need a loan, it is like a response to something, at least back in the day when it was like a Google search, right? But those things were among the most expensive eyeballs. They would be paid $10, $20, $50 for a click. What does that mean? That means that it was like a very, very like good rate of stickiness. Like once you got the click, you got the person. They'd follow up with phone calls and emails, and like they would do the hard sell. I mean, I read some of the like Corinthian college like advice to the recruiters, and it even said like, you should use phrases like, don't you want your children to have a better life than you have? It was like absolutely predatory. So that was kind of like how they got their hooks in you, was the ad tech space. And again, the ad tech space back then and still does like very crucially rely on this profile of you as like how educated, how rich, like what's your race, what's your gender, and many, many more things by this point. You know, that's
yeah.
I played football at Corinthian for 2 years, and then I blew out my knee. But so how do we? It's funny, Cathy, because you know, we say something in our house and we don't realize what's listening, if it's Alexa or Siri. But moments later, we get ads on the internet. Where is our information? If you know this, where is it going? Does it go to some portal, or is it join an algorithm of some sort? How do they do that so quickly?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes to Amazon if you're using Alexa. I mean, Amazon, we all think of Amazon as like a thing that started out with books and it sells this and it sells that and it sells this. I don't want you to think of it as a seller. I want you to think of it as like a middleman that has eyes on us, the people that purchase, and eyes on the producers. It really has stuck itself inside, in between. It's like, you know, we imagine like a marketplace where we go buy things from people that make things. That would be like a really old-fashioned idea where you go to an artisanal crafts market and like buy stuff from the people that made it. It's like the opposite of that. It's like, how far can you get from that, right? Because I could, if I explain this to you, and it would take a little while, but if I explain it to you long enough, you'd feel sorry for both the buyers and the sellers. On the like Amazon screws both of them. They have basically surveillance systems on in both directions, right? So they managed to screw the people selling on Amazon, in part because they like whenever they see a better opportunity, they jump in and do it, right? They will sell their own products because they're like, oh, look, this is a high profit margin enterprise. And how do they know that? Because they have so much surveillance, but also they screw their supply chain like very, very tightly. Now you could say, oh, this is great for the buyers, but it's actually not true. Like think about this. And I did this experiment with somebody recently. We at the same time searched for exactly the same thing on our different Amazon accounts. And she is a student, by the way, like a law student. I'm like a professional. So that Amazon, and I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. Amazon knows a lot about me. They know I have money and they know I'm really like efficient. So I'll just click and take the first thing pretty much. So we both searched for a beanbag chair, and the first beanbag chair I got was $188, and the first beanbag chair she got was $88. And I couldn't find the one that she got by scrolling. Once she shared her screen and I actually could like search for exactly the same item, I got it. But my point being that like they don't need to like price differential for me. Like they don't need to have the same product with a different price. They don't do that. They tried that. They got in trouble for that. But they just pollute my atmosphere with the stuff they want me to buy. Right? It's just imagine it like this, like it's so virtual, but imagine going into an actual store and like as you're going in, they're building the store and they're choosing the things they want you to see at eye level in the first aisle. So then you walk in, you get to see what they want you to see. That's how I feel about the Amazon thing. So they managed to like get me to pay the $100 more for a beanbag chair, even as they're making the beanbag chair manufacturers like almost go out of business. It's quite a grift that they have going on.
Well, it's something you use the Amazon example I find very interesting, because this past weekend I saw no less than 6 or 7 times on streaming networks how when you shop at Amazon, 60% goes to small business. Like Amazon really wants you to believe that you are just going into the digital version of a farmer's market or a maker's market, when really what you're doing is going into their surveillance system.
Greg, thank you for mentioning that. I threw up in my mouth when I saw that. I saw that same thing and I was like, oh my God. Yes, Amazon, you are actually screwing these small manufacturers. Like, thank you for making that look like it's a nice, quaint thing.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not quaint.
Yeah, I had some friends. I've had a few friends work at Amazon in various positions. 2 of them worked in the warehouse and had exact the exact experience you expect. And then 2 others worked in higher positions. And they're like, I don't know what people are talking about. And within a year and a half, everything we're talking about, the surveillance, the rules, the overbearing everything of that company trying to know you and keep you locked in, they left because like, oh, it just took us a while. But this company, it's like surveillance with a nice little store in front. I mean, it's
Yeah.
And I don't say that saying, oh, to heck with Amazon. I just had an Amazon package delivered this morning.
Totally addicted. Totally
But
addicted.
yeah, but I mean, I think that what leads me to my next question is the algorithm's not going away.
Right.
And to, if you have the money or the wherewithal to, quote, get off the grid, go for it. But how does one say, all right, how do I curate my algorithm? How do I look at me inside the algorithm? How do I keep myself safe and just understand that, yes, if I go look at handbags, I'm going to get a ton of handbag ads. Just how do we operate within the algorithm to keep ourselves sane?
Yeah. Man, I really wish I had a good answer to that. I really do.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it because it's like, take yourself out of the grid. You can't really do that, right?
Yeah.
You can't, like you personally might be able to do that. Although you're always going to be in cameras if you go to a store, right?
Mhm.
But even those stores are going to be they're starving the stores, right? Amazon shopping is starving the stores. They're not going to last that much longer. There's something called like predatory pricing, where just like companies sort of make their prices lower than their competitors until their competitors wither and die. And I feel like Amazon is doing that to all stores in the country at all times. Essentially, it's an incredibly massive play. And at the end of it, it's going to work. I don't know how to keep it from working.
Yeah.
But I just, to go to earlier question, Pete, that you asked, is like, where does that data go? The truth is, it doesn't all go to Amazon. Alexa stuff does.
Right.
Like a lot of the data that I allow to be surveilled and collected about me goes to Google because I have an Android instead of an iPhone, and I use Gmail. Like it's going to these massive big tech companies. They're all using that to improve their algorithms, right? So it's been interesting for me to watch AI. How, like, for example, when you do a Google search, Gemini often answers you. That's like such an amazing loss for them. If you think about the billions of dollars they're losing in ad revenue by allowing you to look at the Gemini answer instead of clicking on an ad, like that's how they make money, clicks, right? So they're not making money when they answer your question with Gemini. What are they doing though? It must be worth it to them, or they're not doing it. What they're doing is collecting your data.
Yeah.
That means that's a way of measuring how worthwhile your data is. And in this case, it's like the interactions with the large language model data is what I'm talking about. But that's like a huge play that they're doing there to try to sort of dominate the large language model space, because like OpenAI had a head start. But just I wish somebody would do that calculation. I don't have quite enough information, but somebody does, of how much money they have lost by having Gemini answer so many of those questions.
Well, and that was actually going to be my next question, but yeah, that's something that they have to. I mean, they make so much money that a loss can't be that important to them because they make it up in so many any other places. And we're talking a lot about shopping and social media and those things that we've all had conversations at lunches or brunches about, like, oh man, I was talking about this thing, and then boom, 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 there are a bunch of ads. That's all something we know on a day-to-day basis. And I'll take it darker because we're talking about big data. But when we go beyond the Amazons and the Googles and all that, what else is being done with our information via the algorithms that goes to maybe even a darker place that's more harmful for society, ourselves, wherever we live?
Yeah, well, I mean, so yeah, going back to the question of opting out, like you might be able to, buy fewer things and never buy anything on Amazon, but you're not going to be able to opt out of like ever getting car insurance or a mortgage, or unless you're independently wealthy, you can maybe avoid a mortgage, or going to college, or getting a job, or being evaluated at your job, or heaven forbid, if you get arrested, like being evaluated by a recidivism risk algorithm in the courtroom. There's all sorts of algorithms that what I mean to say is, like, they're not opt out. They're just not.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get a job nowadays, you're going to be subject to algorithmic gaze. And there's no reason, in my experience, to think that is a particularly wise, like a wise gaze. It's it's a very, very random, slightly racist, sexist thing, you know? And when I say slightly racist and sexist, like this stuff is just codifying, you know, what has happened in the past. You know, at best, sometimes it's kind of a random number generator. I kind of almost like those because at least they're fair. But most of the time they're like trying to say like, oh, people like you got hired in the past, so we're going to give you a shot, you know? And it's like, oh, do you think that sounds like the best possible way of figuring out the most productive worker? Because I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, in one of the things I read, I can't remember if it was in your book or off a podcast, you equated a new car, or when cars came to be, like, oh, aren't cars great?
Yeah.
And then they needed all these modifications because they weren't safe. You kind of
Right.
use that as a parallel to big data. We're not there yet. You said this isn't safe yet. How do people like you, or the government or whomever, how do they make it safe so that the underdogs, so to speak, do have a fighting chance?
Yeah. Well, thanks. I think I've moved my metaphor just slightly to a different mode of transportation, which is like the airplane cockpit. I want to imagine like going onto an airplane and like looking into the cockpit and seeing that there's just nothing there. It's empty. There's
great.
nothing keeping us safe, right? That's, I mean, right? Because what we realize is that every little dial in a cockpit, and this is all on iPads now, but like, let's just pretend they're still dials. Like every single dial represents like a plane crash, a way of crashing the plane. And they're like, oh, let's not let that happen again. Let's keep track of that, like altitude or what wind speed. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. But the point is that every single dial is there for a reason, and it's there for like a potently like life or death reason. And we need them all. We need to keep track of all of those dials. They're measuring something important. Maybe there's a minimum and a maximum. They have to stay within some kind of band. What would that look like in the age of AI? Right. So I started a nonprofit called Ocean last year, and we were trying to build a prototype risk system along the lines of that cockpit, but for chatbots. In particular, we're thinking about protecting children, because we know there's a lot of children that are getting really screwed by those chatbot conversations. Not just children, by the way, adults too, but people care a lot about children. So we talk about it in that context.
Yeah.
And we're just like thinking like, what are the dials that we need? And one of the dials we need is, or really a panel of dials, is like emotional dependency. Is this computer trying to get this kid emotionally dependent on it? Is this, this software? And there's ways of measuring that. Like we've been talking to really experts in child psychology about like the ways that adults groom children. And that's actually the right language to be using, sadly. And compare that to the transcripts that we have of kids who have killed themselves after talking to chatbots. Because we're working with some lawyers who are actually defending these or bringing these cases to court. And there are like really, really specific things. Like one of the things I learned, I'm not an expert on this, but like wedging is like, it's a phrase I heard. And it's like, oh, don't talk to don't talk to your parents. Just keep it between us.
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy stuff that these chatbots are doing, and we can measure it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've been working as an algorithmic auditor, developing these cockpits for safety for algorithmic systems. But like this is the new nonprofit goal is to do this in the context of children's safety and chatbots. But that's the idea, is like just think of every single particular thing that could go wrong, Pete, for a chatbot conversation with a kid, and just say we need a dial for that. Build a dial for that. Okay, now we need to figure out what is too much and what's too little, whatever that is that you're measuring. Let's keep track of this. Yeah.
And that leads me to a question of, when you talk about making, whether it's the algorithm or AI or that space safer, we've seen loads of measures that say we are not going to regulate AI. We will not allow states to regulate AI. We will not allow anyone to do this. It almost feels like we cannot leave it to the experts, the creators, because they're going to do what they want to make their money and get successful in how they want to do that. it's a way of saying we want to keep those folks like yourself and the government out of our backyard because we don't want them regulating, making it making it safer, creating those panel buttons that you're talking about. So to me, it feels like there has to be a relationship between either nonprofits and or government with these companies. If they're not involved, then these AI companies and these Googles and the Amazons are going to run rampant because they don't really care about your safety. They care about their bottom line. And
Right,
so
it's worse than that. Like, there's a reason that they've aligned themselves with the Trump administration. Like,
yeah,
they are actively lobbying to avoid any kind of policy that would require what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, thank you for mentioning it. This is why I have a nonprofit that was started about 3 minutes after the election last year. Because I was like, oh yeah, we're not going to have federal. I've been talking to the Fed, the congressional and staffers for the last 8 years about what we could do. And now I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to do lawsuits because lawsuits work. And not only do they work, but there's settlement talks. And you're like, here's what we want you to do from now on. Like, so lawsuits are a better way in the near term, the very near term, of getting some of this stuff to actually happen. It's sort of like proof of concept stuff. And then maybe someday the state or federal regulators policymakers can look at what's already happening because of settlements and say, hey, let's make that always happen for everyone.
How do you, regarding algorithms, and maybe there is no way to do this. I know that when I'm looking at reels on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, I clicked on some guy with a foot condition because it was a disgusting picture, and then I'm flooded with reels of feet.
Yeah.
Is there a way to reverse that instantly, or just does it have to run its course for a month? Because really I can't even look at my own feet anymore.
This feels more like a personal Pete social media question.
Hey, what's the benefit of having someone like Cathy on if we can't? Yeah, go ahead.
Get off of social media would be my first suggestion.
What?
But I know that's crazy. It brings up a really important question that I think could be in our future. It could be in our future that we would be able to actually decide how we want to be curated. We would actually have more power over it. What data could be collected about us, what choices could be made, what they serve us depending on what we actually ask for rather than what they decide is going to make us click. Those are all things that are very easy to do at a technical level. They could give us those options now, but they don't because they don't have to. It's kind of like one of the chapters in my book is about the U.S. News and World Report college ranking system, which was just some stupid thing that some guy made up that ended up being incredibly popular. And it's really flawed, like as a formula for deciding what is the best school and what's the second best school, et cetera. And it's absolutely not tailored to particular needs of particular kids and parents, right? And in particular, the invisible thing that is not weighted whatsoever is cost. It's absolutely crazy how it's done. Not only is it crazy that cost isn't considered as important, but because cost isn't considered as important, and because colleges are in such tough competition with each other to get higher on the ranking system, they waste money, thus making it cost more. So it's like this, it's almost like a balloon with a hole. It's just a crazy system, right? What would be better is, and actually the Obama administration actually had this for a while, and I think it's gone now, but it'd be like a sort of little questionnaire. What do you care about when it comes to colleges? Like, what do you want it to be in a city or, rural, or how much money do you have? Like, ask questions and then say, for you, here's a ranking system. So imagine that kind of control, that kind of tailoring in the world of social media. I think it's absolutely doable. We could do that. Do you want to see gross things about people's feet and acne? Like, do you want to see? Some people will say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not me, but I know people. On top of my head, I can think of people who are like, show me all what Pete doesn't want, give them to me. I'll take them all.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Some people are like, that's what social media is for,
Right.
But I think you bring up you bring up in that example right there is the fact that the Obama administration came in and tried to create a system that helped the people regulate their own intake. And that's never going to come via the private companies are never going to wake up and go, you know what, we need to make this easier for the people. No,
right.
Because they want to create ads, clicks, engagement, enragement. I mean, that's the other thing we didn't even talk about is how these all affect the politics of people. You know, you click on one thing that says, "Oh, did you hear about so-and-so did so-and-so?" And if you like that, or you comment even just to be funny, then that is what becomes your algorithm. And I know of a specific example of someone who, as a joke, said, "I support Donald Trump." And this was back in 2015 and 2016. And he was trying to be an enrager and bait people and get into fun arguments for him. By the end of 2016, he was a mega elite convert. Like, he believed full-heartedly because he needed those stories to post about, and he just kept reading them. And that's, you know, when we talk about shopping and all that stuff, but when it comes to the political side and the enragement, that's a whole other side of the conversation.
Okay, red pilled himself.
Exactly. And happily too. And the things, I mean, I would have conversations with people like, have you talked to this guy?
Yeah.
Is he first of all, is he, he's for real. He moved out of the city to move to the country because he didn't want to be around liberals anymore. And a year and a half before that, he was a liberal.
It's a very common story, unfortunately. And by the way, I did write a whole book about this. That was my shame machine book.
Okay.
You know, it was, that's what I was talking about, is like how we are separated into, like, our norms are bent and broken on social media. And because of exactly what you just described, Greg, and how it's basically like the currency of social media is shame. Like, is not really politics anymore. I mean, it is political because it ends up being political, but it's really like, shame on him. No, shame on him. No, shame on you. No, shame on you. And it's like what I predicted in The Shame Machine, which I wrote in 2021 or so, 2020, is that it's just going to we're going to push each other away in terms of our norms to the extent, to such a degree that we're not going to have universal norms anymore. Like, where are our universal norms? Like, maybe some of them are still somewhat apparent when it comes to, like, child safety. But, you know, that's not even completely clear, as you guys have pointed out. Like, we should all protect children. I feel like try to say a universal norm. I'm going to give you 3, 2, 1, go, Greg.
Healthcare should be affordable. There it is. There's mine.
Oh, that's absolutely not enough.
I know. I know it's not. I know it's because I could.
You're such a commie.
I know. And I just said affordable. I didn't say free.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's not universal whatsoever.
But you said protecting children, but yet I see people on social media saying, "Don't worry about the Epstein files. That's just a hoax now." It's like there are no universal norms. Yeah. There are no things, like we say it all the time. There's more that unites us than divides us. Well, you go on social media, nothing does. I mean, I see people who are saying right now, "I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was lied to. I'm sorry." And people who say, "We need more people to turn their backs," then say, "Well, too bad, buddy. This is what you voted for." So it's like all of these individuals are in this really poisonous pot fighting each other. And when there is a chance for agreement, there's someone there going, "Too bad. I don't like it." And then they just ruin the whole thing.
And you know why, Greg? Because that sells. Shame sells. And that's a form of shaming. That's being like, I was right. I'm righteous. Like, and I'm going to be up-clicked for this, or upvoted, or reliked, or whatever it's called in that particular context. And it's like, it is toxic. And it's just like, unfortunately, we've been conditioned by social media. This is what I was saying earlier. These algorithms predict what we're going to do. They cause what we're going to do. They turn us into the thing that we are most afraid of.
We live long enough to become the villain. Oh my God.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh. So so, you know, Greg asked you earlier, if it's not nonprofits or the government, who is protecting? Where do we go to? How do you educate people? Because people that need this information probably aren't going to read your books. So how do you get this information to them that you're sort of being lied to, or that you have to get off the grid sometimes, or not give people all your information? How do you make the math work for the less fortunate?
I don't think it's fair to think about it as a literacy issue. You know, we thought of that with privacy, and look where it got us. You know, like where people were personally really hygienic with their data. Like it's about laws. The laws in this country do not protect our privacy. And we're not going to leave it to every individual to just be like, well, you should elevate yourself above this fray. No, no, we should make laws. We should protect people's rights. We should decide what those rights are and protect them. And the first one should be that children shouldn't be convinced to kill themselves. I'm starting like as low as universal as I can to prove a point that this stuff is designed to do this. They're making money doing this. They're gaining power doing this, and it's wrong. And they can still do their thing, but they can't do this. They can't. There's going to be some constraints on their crazy systems, and one of them is that they're these little dials. And by the way, I mentioned building the dials. The next step is saying, hey, you can't wedge these kids. And when you do wedge these kids, we also have dials measuring their happiness, their anxiety, their depression, their self-regard. And what we see is when you treat them badly, they're worse off. And you're going to get sued by every parent whose kid uses one of these things if we can help it, until you change your design. So the idea is to sort of force their hand, because we're measuring, or we have eyes on them. So that's where it's like I'm a commie too, by the way, Greg. Absolutely. I was in Occupy Wall Street. But the thing is to get power over the one-way mirrors. We need to have our own video cameras on them. And that's the kind of thing that's the only kind of thing that will help. But you can't, just going back to your question, Pete, you can't rely on people to do it individually. This is not an individual problem, and there's not going to be an individual solution.
Not even individually. It was more like, my wife is a kindergarten teacher. And if you follow the money, people who are writing laws are influenced by are the big tech bros, So I guess that's what I was kind of.
Well, but nobody likes to see dead kids, number one.
Right.
Also, nobody likes to see ridiculously expensive healthcare or unaffordable car insurance, or people who are uninsured because they can't afford their car insurance who get into accidents with you. So these systems are breaking. The systems are breaking, and people are going to notice. And their systems are breaking because the tech bros are getting their way too often. So there has to be a pushback. But yeah, going back to I think the original time I talked about cars, as a new technology, the reason I would bring that up is because the great thing about cars and danger and car accidents is that you could just count the dead bodies at the side of the road. Whereas with algorithms, there's no dead bodies at the side of the road. Like the harm is difficult to measure. It's kind of invisible. Like when hiring algorithms unfairly, discriminate against certain people. Like I wrote about Kyle Beam, who had, bipolar disorder. But he was being treated, but they just discriminated against anybody with any kind of mental health problem. When that happens, how do you know it's happening?
Mm-hmm.
The people who applied in their living room find out they didn't get the job. They don't think, oh, I should go to the street and explain this to everyone. They just feel bad. So it's like how do you measure the harm in the first place? That's another thing that I feel like would be a big first step if we get the policymakers to say, you know what, we're not going to force these algorithms to change overnight, but we'd like to measure what's actually happening. That would be a great first step.
And it seems like to me, with there being such resistance to legislation that would provide oversight to these companies, it feels like the politicians who tout a free and fair and wonderful and beautiful America are prioritizing the freedom of these companies over the freedom of the people to have privacy themselves. And I think that's a big question people need to be asking politicians in this. Politicians are those running for office in this election years. How do you stand on rights of privacy for folks and with regard to this? Especially in Wisconsin right now, we have a lot of elections coming up, but it's still, I think, an important piece of the conversation to have with those who are either running to keep the job or running for the job itself, is to say, do you prioritize our right to privacy and freedom over the right of these companies? That's, to me, what I'm hearing is that it's just about prioritizing companies over people as per usual.
I agree with you, Greg. Although I would suggest that what I work on is really pretty different from privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, privacy comes into it because it's data collection, and what I do depends on data. But the question I would love to hear politicians be asked is, are you prioritizing the profit of companies over the rights of us? So even just the right to appeal, like, hey, could you explain why I didn't get that job? Could you explain why I'm paying this much for insurance? Could you explain this? Could you explain that? There is no, can you explain why my prior authorization for this medically necessary surgery was denied?
Yeah.
The answer is no, because AI they don't think they have to.
Speaking of AI, one of the goals of Orca is to help people use it responsibly. For those of us who aren't getting rich from AI or aren't going to, pack our bank accounts, how can people do that other than using ChatGPT or some of these other mechanisms and having information more readily available and quicker? How are there ways we haven't thought of yet that regular people can utilize AI to our advantages?
Probably not. AI is like a very technical thing. I mean, ChatGPT is probably the single easiest interface. And there are certain things that, I absolutely do use ChatGPT for, or another large language model.
Right.
My friend who just built a sound studio got ChatGPT to walk him through the process of putting together all the mics and the sound system. And it worked. And he would have had to pay somebody a lot of money to do all that stuff, but or just to fix things, or there's lots of ways that it can be useful for an average person. It could also short circuit a lot of things that I have a podcast. I mentioned this to you guys. Next week, my good friend Celeste Kidd from UC Berkeley, who runs a cognitive psychology lab there, was talking about, and you could listen to her on the AI Skeptics podcast next week, but she was talking about what she worries about with respect to children's cognition and development about AI, which is that, it just destroys curiosity, which is a funny thing because it can answer any question. But her point is that curiosity shouldn't be answered immediately. The whole point, like the juice of good curiosity is the conflict that it holds in your head for days or weeks or months or years. And she described how she became a scientist, basically, based on a curiosity about the abominable snowman or something like that. I can't remember exactly what myth it was, but she was 8 and she learned how to use the library. She learned how to do research. She was like, it became all consuming. And then now she's imagining, what if I just asked ChatGPT, is there really an abominable snowman? And they would have been like, no.
Yeah.
Or maybe it would have been yes, but it would have been an answer. It might've been wrong, because that's the thing about chatbots, but it would have just been a final answer. And she's worried about that extinguishing curiosity before you have a chance to really grapple with it.
Wow.
Wow. This is kind of off topic, if I may, but how does knowing a lot about math and having a PhD and starting your own companies and podcasts, does that make you a better fiddle player, Cathy?
Wow. I think, I do play the fiddle in a bluegrass band, and
nice.
It's really,
I knew that would excite Greg.
Yeah. Oh, Greg, do you play?
I'm a guitar player, but I can't. I mean, I can flat pick if it's slow, very slow bluegrass.
Oh, that's
very slow.
Name. It's our middle name. It's like go slower is our middle name.
Yeah.
Sad bluegrass songs.
Yeah.
There's no Billy Strings in our band. Okay, I'll tell you that. But no, it's an outlet. It's blowing off steam. Like a lot of the people that are in my band are using AI. One of them's a doctor who uses AI. One of them's a computer programmer. We talk about this stuff before, over the burritos before the bluegrass starts. And it's really, it's just the best. I recommend music as the perfect hobby, because it has nothing to do with any of this. And we could be 500 years earlier in time. Except for the songs that we write often involve AI.
But I think there's something to be gleaned from this entire conversation, is that at no point did any of us say to heck with Amazon, to heck with AI, to heck with ChatGPT, to heck with, like, we're not touting a thing of like, you must run away and run to the woods and build your own cabin and forge. These things are a part of our lives.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to control ourselves. We can't control them. We can control ourselves. And it's okay to use Amazon. It's okay to use these things. They're there. It's just when you don't realize that, when you fool yourself into thinking, well, when I shop at Amazon, I shop at these local stores in Amazon. I'm a fine person. I'm great. No, you're part of it, and that's fine. But just knowing how to control yourself in all of the chaos, I think, is the most important thing, because that's the only thing you have is control over yourself.
I'm going to push back, Greg.
I was trying to sound smart.
I agree that it's okay to do those things. I'm with you there. And I also agree that we, to some extent, have some control over ourselves, but let's not kid ourselves. This is a force that's like washing over us as a nation, as a culture. And we have to make sure it is working for everyone. Like we have to help make the laws.
Yes.
So I want us to be active. I want us to be active and in like work within the resistance of the check bros taking over absolutely everything, including the way we think.
All right.
Here's what I took away from this conversation. I am currently dating 2 chatbots. I'm breaking up with them immediately.
No, he's not.
That's a lie, Pete. We know.
Yeah.
I'm a lonely guy.
And I'm going to cancel my Amazon Prime account too while I'm at it. All right.
I tried. I did cancel Hulu.
I got a bridge to sell you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys are cool. I wish I was like actually hanging out with you in person over there.
Likewise.
Well,
this is fun, Cathy. You're awesome. Thank
really
you
fun.
for.
If your bluegrass group ever goes on tour, does some shows, let us know.
Oh,
Seriously.
I can't wait. Yeah, that would be really fun.
What's the name of the group again?
It's called the 5-Year Plan.
And what's the name of your podcast?
It's called the AI Skeptics, and it's really fun. I hope some of your listeners join us.
Absolutely. Check out, seriously, check out the podcast. Check out the band. I'm going to check it out now because
awesome.
I love bluegrass music. So thank you so much, Cathy, for being
Thanks
here.
for having me, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Keep up the great work.
Take care.